At the Sports History Network, we're proud to introduce you to a new sponsor for our podcasts. It's Home Field Apparel, your premium collegiate apparel brand right out of Indianapolis. They've got incredibly comfortable t-shirts, plus they're officially licensed with vintage college designs. They have over 150 plus colleges available now and always adding more. Homefield digs through the archives and history of your school to find unique logos, mascots, and moments to make thoughtful designs for your school. When you shop today, new customers can get a 15% discount off their first purchase using the promo code SPORTSHISTORY at checkout. You can learn more at homefieldapparel.com.
He's back by popular demand. Dr. John Behee comes back to talk about Coach Yost, Michigan's tradition maker, his great book, and how Coach Yost dealt with the changes of 1906 in football from the lens of Michigan. It's all coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the Gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And once again, we are honored and really intrigued because we have Dr. John Behee that wrote the great book on Fielding H. Yost called Coach Yost, Michigan's Tradition Maker, with us once again. Wanted to honor Dr. John Behee. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen.
Well, thank you.
You know, your book is so intriguing. I've had a couple friends that I believe I know one of them has bought it and read it, and the other one I'm not sure if he's borrowed it from the other friend or not, but they've talked about it quite a bit, and very intriguing. And listening to the podcast, we had a 3-part series for you listeners out there that we just had a few weeks ago with Dr. Behee, and it's very intriguing. And one chapter that really comes up is one that we're going to discuss tonight on the very pivotal time in football indeed. But before we get to that, maybe you could share with the folks out there where they can get a copy of your book.
Okay. We have a website, Behee.com, and it will take you right through. It has some nice photos of the book, and step by step, it takes you to ways in which 3 places where you can order it: the MDN, Nicola's bookstore, and then Amazon. So it's all right there. I think you just follow the easy instructions. And if you have any trouble, raise some heck, and we'll see if we can respond properly.
All right. And folks, if you're driving, don't worry about stopping and getting a pencil or trying to write it while you're driving. We will put it in the show notes of this podcast. And again, Behee.com is spelled BEHEE.com. Again, we'll have the link in the show notes, so hook you up to Dr. Behee's website. Doctor, I'm glad you were able to come on and join us again, because we had a lengthy conversation, but there are so many topics of your book that are so intriguing and interesting that we didn't get to talk about. And one that we agreed that really needs some mentioning is sort of that pivotal year of 1905 into 1906. It was a really traumatic time for football. Some big changes were about to happen very abruptly. And I love how you put it in the context of how Coach Fielding Yost handled it while at Michigan. So I'm hoping we can discuss some of that tonight.
Yeah. And of course, I think as much as Fielding Yost, who was off in Tennessee at that point in time and away from the campus, because he was a part-time faculty member, not a faculty member, but a part-time person that's a coach of football. But the way the students handled it, the way the alumni handled it, I was genuinely impressed as I did the research. I thought, this is the way you do it. You don't get out and start turning things over, lighting fires, breaking no. Let's see if we can make reason be persuasive. And they did a terrific job. And I think we captured it pretty nicely. Dr. Bob Soderstrom, who wrote the story of the building of Michigan Stadium and all of the Yost activities in that, he remarked to me, and he has endorsed this book, he said, that was the most intriguing chapter for me. I had not heard any of that argument that preceded Michigan leaving the conference, and I think you handled it very well. So it was quite a compliment.
Yeah, that definitely is. And I fully agree with him. And I guess just to put this in context, the landscape of football, let's talk about, the end of 1905 season. Of course, we had, many opponents of football were coming up and wanting it banned. There were schools that were banning the game from their campuses. People were up in arms. The press was very much against football. And then you had, the game, I believe it was Swarthmore and University of Pennsylvania played, and a very famous figure in football, Tiny Maxwell, was sort of the object of Penn's frustration. That was their whole tactic, was to just beat on the best player of Swarthmore, who was Tiny Maxwell. And he was bloodied up pretty good. And the newspaper clipping had his picture in it. And the President Teddy Roosevelt at the time saw it and was up in arms and called for the powers that be in football that they needed to change or the game may be doomed. So you had that sort of looming in there. But Coach Yost had some troubles of his own on the home front. And maybe you could describe some of those.
Sure. And back to Teddy Roosevelt's involvement, that has been overplayed. He really did not take a major step as a president. As a matter of fact, he couldn't ban football except at West Point and at the Naval Academy. Then that was not his ambition. He had called a meeting of the folks at Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Penn. He called that luncheon meeting prior to some of the violence on the field. But let's get beyond that. The football was in trouble from the start because of violence. And Princeton and Yale were the two, with Yale in particular, and Walter Camp, feeling like they were the entrepreneurs who put the whole game together, took it out of that wide field, mass against mass, and got it down to 11 players. And the game that we know took the rugby out, and the game that we know today is football. They also then were a self-appointed rules committee, and they liked the toughness. This was American grit, facing other players equally intent upon winning a game. And we were the presidents of the different universities in this country followed the model of European higher education. It was for the elite, and any sports were strictly intramural. They play it because kids will be kids, young men will be young men, and that's it. In the United States, it became sports and the universities because of the mass higher education concept. Everyone ought to be able to go to school if they want. The emphasis here was on identifying with your school. And it was far, and I started it, as I said, in the East with the Ivy League schools, but as it began moving west, there was big time in 1880 at Yale and Harvard and Princeton and Penn. It was 1890, a decade later, before it hit the Midwest with that same kind of momentum. But when it did, it was violent, and there were injuries, and there was reason for concern, but there were no rules changes coming out of Yale and the self-appointed rules committee to make it a safer game. So now we get some trouble. And then, of course, probably the greatest stimulus of let's get rid of this football was the faculty salaries were diminutive by comparison with that given to part-time coaches. fans were, the interest went well beyond the campus. We get crowds. We get the tremendous desire for a good team, a big team, and then here came income. The faculty always has felt that it's a kid's game. It's a youth game. We're staying out of this. We're academicians. We're here for a far different purpose. And then it got out of hand. It grew into such by massive proportions that now, and it was very violent, but not in the Midwest where Yost was coaching, not in the Big Ten. And of course, the Big Ten was the first to put a conference together and begin to regulate the tramp athletes, some of the problems that were causing greatest concern among faculty members. So anyway, we've got Yost at Michigan, as you and I spoke the last time together. 55 wins, 1 tie in 2003 against Minnesota, and a 2-0 loss to an undefeated Chicago team. A tremendous publicity to Michigan and to Coach Yost. This was not, while this happened, some rumblings began, inspired by faculty who wanted to see change. And so that basically, that gave the title to Chapter 8 for me, All Hell Breaks Loose. Because when the faculty began to step in and say, we are the boss, you are the folks who listen to the boss, they did not get the listening they had anticipated.
You allude to it right at the beginning of Chapter 8 that a person from Fielding Yost's past, his former boss, the president of Stanford, was sort of that voice that was there that started, I believe, raising the faculty's awareness and getting their angst up about this. I believe his name is David Starr Jordan.
That's correct. Yeah, and he had been president of Indiana University. They've recently taken his name off buildings. They had a building that was named for him at Indiana University because he was also into that eugenics. People are born smart, and if you aren't born this way, this is kind of the Aryan nation thing that Adolf Hitler ran rampant with in World War II. So that he didn't make any friends with that part of his life. He comes to Stanford, and he comes out and interviews Yost, who has been, he's gotten tremendous appeal and with his success at 3 other schools. And so he says, yes, this guy is good. And Yost gets hired and does a sensational job. The massing of people responding to the successful football team at Stanford that Yost put together, and their victory over their chief rival, the University of California, this concerned him, President Jordan. First of all, they're paying Yost far more than he's paying his faculty members. He didn't like that. The students want to know what these guys are doing. Every move the athletes are making, the students are interested in. Wait a minute. Shouldn't they have that same keen interest in our faculty? Those are the stars. He begins to really get rankled by this whole thing. Some schools, in answer to how do we handle this whole thing, football's getting out of hand, decide that rather than have a part-time coach like Yost, and there are many like Yost across the country, maybe we should have our alumni hang in there. Let's have an alumni game. That's where today's homecomings, it came into play. And so, but we don't need Yost. We got a wonderful player here who's a student. He's one of our people. He'll be our coach. So off Yost went. That was just the beginning of Jordan's anti-football moves. In a short time, and within 2 years, he canceled football altogether. we'll make rugby or association football, soccer. We'll make that our student sport. Now, this is him being dictatorial and imposing his will on students who are not. I mean, they have to go along with him as a president, but they're not happy. Now, but he does. He's not happy with just taking care of things at Stanford. He needs to it's an invitation to go to Chicago to speak to the North Central Association, about 150 educators, high school and university. And he says to them that Yost has taken 2 players who had no business even going to college and put them into his starting lineup in this team that's beating everybody in the point-a-minute teams. And he says it's a dirty shame. And then he picks on Dan Gregory, who was a freshman at Stanford, and he transfers to Michigan because he wants to go to law school, and he picks on him. And he says, doesn't do it by name, but he lets his audience know that this young man had no business going to college, had no business playing on a football team. So the Detroit Free Press gets this. They check on Dan Gregory. Who is this tramp athlete? He is enrolled at Michigan in law school, and he has no problems. He's doing well. Just April 1903, Jordan is invited to deliver that speech to the attendees of the North Central Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools in Chicago. And he talks about this dirty outrage of Coach. So the Detroit Free Press interviews Gregory. And he says, the dirty outrage is really President Jordan. His statement contains absolutely no truth. I went to Stanford to prepare myself for a law profession. I went as a special student with permission to make up back work while in college. The only entrance examinations I took were English Comp and English Literature. And I have my credits for both to show that I passed both of those. I got mixed up in a little escapade with some other students and dropped out. It taught me a severe lesson. I decided to go to Washburn Prep School in San Jose and make a complete preparation for college. Now, let me tell you how I happened to come to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to law school. On the coast, it's thought of as the Yale of the West. Yost saw me in San Jose, told me he was going to Ann Arbor, and asked what I intended to do the following year. I told him, I'm going to go to law school. Well, he says, when you're looking about that, consider Michigan. This is the only conversation, says Gregory, that we had on the subject. I knew Yost from Stanford. I liked him. I'd made some friends who are alumni of Michigan. It's a first-class law school. The Detroit Free Press then checked to see how's Gregory doing, and he's doing fabulously. Now, they didn't check on Willie Heston. Heston was the other fellow who was playing at a prep school at San Jose. And Yost talked to him about what he wanted to do. And he said he'd like to go to law school. And Yost said, well, you want to give Michigan some consideration. And he did. What President Jordan did not know and didn't apparently have any interest in finding out was that Heston was a class valedictorian at the high school he attended in Oregon. He was no dumbbell. He was no tramp athlete. He came to Michigan, but just by luck. He's going to go back home to his Oregon hometown. He's at the train station. They all traveled by train in those days. And he says, there's a fellow there who's come from Toledo. He's got a round trip ticket. And he says, can't use this. Can you? And he buys that round trip. He buys a ticket which takes him back to Toledo for $25. He shows up, Willie Heston, on the Michigan campus, and Yost says, "You got to be kidding me. Where did you come from? How did you get here?" Willie Heston became, in the next 4 years, probably the greatest football player in the history of University of Michigan football. Now, these are the fellows that don't belong in college, according to President Jordan. Well,
now I thought it was really interesting. Maybe you could describe it. Coach Yost is reading all this and hearing Jordan's arguments, who is really attacking Yost and what he's done. He's told him, basically we chased him out of Stanford, and he's doing all this in the Western Conference, which is a predecessor of the Big Ten. He's doing this. He's taking these players from California, don't belong in school. And tell us what Yost's reaction was to that, because I find that very interesting.
Well, first of all, he's a lawyer by training, and he was outstanding at making his case. The faculty athletic representative, that's the guy who makes sure that everybody behaves themselves in the sports programs at the university, and he represents the faculty to them. And this case is Albert Pattengale. So he was asked, and let me see if I had a nice little reply. He says, "In justice to Mr. Yost, the greatest sin we can lay at his door is that for 2 seasons he has led Michigan's team to victory. He is a man of good personal habits and enthusiastic in his work. He exercises a wholesome influence over the young men under him. We've never been exposed to the body of trouble that we had before with the other coaches in the past. Other coaches, when an athlete was being declared ineligible because he was failing academically, they would beg for better grades and better support. Let's get him eligible so we can win. Yost never did that. He played with whoever was there. But if the whole tale, this is continue with Albert Pattengale. If the whole tale were unfolded, it would give all of you, by comparison, a much higher appreciation of Yost's services. We've had many inquiries and have not heard from any sources anything to give cause for uneasiness. Indeed, we know that as long as we retain him, a large body of students will be interested in football, and that those in training will keep training and play clean ball. And we insist that the influence of these 2 facts is deep and wide and good." Now, this is a faculty athletic representative. And he's right in the middle of things. He knows Yost. He knows what he's talking about. Now, Yost lets him, go ahead and have his say. But then, now I don't want to read the rest of this because this is so long. I'm afraid I'll bore people. But at the bottom of the page, here comes Yost to the public in his statement. It's not the policy of Michigan athletics and management to discuss matters in the public press. But since so much has appeared in the public press, which puts Michigan in a false light, in justice to Michigan, a few statements of facts regarding ourselves are not out of place at this time, he says. And then he goes on to talk about, we're absolutely, we have good people here. We coach them well. They play clean football. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. They both made those public statements to the press, but I found it really interesting that Yost, you described, I believe, 2 different times, since he had a personal relationship with President Jordan, he actually corresponded with him. And most people would probably go and want to sock the guy in the mouth for belittling him in the public eye. But maybe you could describe what Coach Yost wrote in his correspondence to President Jordan.
Yeah, he really was diplomatic. because here he's gotten the accusations that that they must have given these players, especially Heston and Gregory, must have given them huge amounts of money. And he had some company in those claims. The McClure's magazine was read by a lot of people, and then a fellow, and his name was Jordan also, although he's not a relative of the present Jordan. Basically they're naming names. This fellow was associated with the University of Wisconsin campus, but he also did a lot of interviews.
And his name was Edward S. Jordan, I believe.
You got it. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And basically what he's done there is to name people, call, accuse them of obtaining enormous sums of money to play football. And he makes this so strong and absolutely certain that his readers thought that something needs to be done. College football is in trouble. Something definitely needs to be done. And both President Jordan and this fellow, and then Henry Needham published some in McClure magazines. The one by Jordan was in Collier's magazine. I hope I didn't misstate that. But anyway, those rumblings, and of course, now that's the immorality being questioned, or the morality being questioned. The schools in the East, where football was born in the United States, and where the four teams reigned, Yale, Princeton, Harvard, and Penn, they were doing their best to destroy the image of football. One of Walter Camp's best friends was refereeing the game. Trying to think who it was now. Anyway, it's Harvard freshman, Burr, B-U-R-R was his last name, is playing against Yale, and he's down receiving a punt. Yale is punting to him, and here come the players to cover the punt and smash him in the mouth, break his jaw. The referee does not see, kick him when he's down. The referee does not see any violence or anything to punish or penalize. Oh, boy. I mean, the president of Harvard was asked to help get football back into shape where it's no longer, allowing these violations. He said that the thing that is worse about football, that cheating and brutality are profitable, is the main evil of football. Cheating and brutality is profitable. Now, this is the president of Harvard, who a lot of people are listening to. This rumblings are all happening between 1903 and 1905. In 1905, we were getting a lot of press, ugly press. And while these are not problems that are a part of Big Ten football at this point in time, and the one who knows it best is President James Angel of the University of Michigan. He comes to the banquets, year-ending banquets. He gives a speech as one of the several speakers. He brings a group of students in, teachers in, to witness a football game, which is played with great sportsmanship. The Yost teams often get very kind articles in the New York press, even because of their sportsmanship. He should know better, but he is petitioned by the University of Wisconsin's president to do something about college football, which is running rampant. It's out of control. We need to, as faculty, get it back into control of it. So Angel then comes to the rescue of basically the Wisconsin and the Chicago faculties and their presidents.
Intriguing. There's such a myriad of things that are going on in the world of football. especially in the East, and you got, President Jordan in the West, sort of on the attack here, and, Coach Yost and, others like Amos Alonzo Stagg, they're sort of caught in the middle of this fire. And like you said, President Angel is sort of their guardian angel, of some sorts. Yeah. He's sort of deflecting some of that. So
now Angel has tremendous. Well, first of all, he's the senior of them all. He's a statesman. He has been. He was chosen by two presidents of the United States to be in charge of treaties and an immigration act. In other words, he had diplomacy. He knew how to move through difficult problems. So he has a lot of background. And President Van Hise at Wisconsin knows that if Angel calls a meeting of their faculties, it will happen. And so he did. And so they met in Chicago at the Beach House Hotel in January 1905, and came back with 8 resolutions for change. The faculties were to act upon this. They were to discuss it, debate it, and then this committee of faculty representatives would meet again in Chicago. And if any of the objections got a 2/3 vote, corrections to the 8 proposals would be made.
And just for clarification, Doctor, this was in the predecessor of the Big Ten, the Western Conference, correct?
No, the Big Ten comes in the 90s, about 96. So this is at least, we've had a Big Ten conference, a Western Conference, a Western Conference of faculty athletic representatives. Had that for probably about 6 years. Well, let's see now. I would say 12 years before this meeting. So the Big Ten is setting the pace. And in any case, so now we've got 8 resolutions to deal with. I mean, they're absolutely mindless. It is vengeful. The President Angel gave Albert Pettingill the job of representing him and setting this whole thing up. So they're meeting now at the Chicago Beach Hotel. 10 people now, because we got 10 members of the conference at this point in time. And Pettingill reads the letter from James B. Angel, President James B. Angel, stating the purpose of the meeting. It spoke of the roughness in college football. Colleges were setting a bad example for high schools and sandlot games. Severe injuries were occurring. Now, here are 4 key concerns then that Angel said. The athletic excitement diminishes academic achievement on campuses. Balance is needed. Oh, we've got these students way too interested in football. Come on. Balance is needed. How do we get them interested in academics? Number 2, values in university life have become distorted when brawn instead of brains is held in great esteem. Athletic heroism needs to be diminished. We don't need these stars. Come on. 3, it's wrong to train men for a public spectacle and idolize their trainers, their coaches, when at the same time, intellectual trainers, our professors, are given very little recognition. All right, that's just 3. Now there are 4 of them. Number 4, huge expenditures of money, all out of proportion, are being spent for athletic exercise and games. Temptations to misuse these funds are plentiful. Were there any misuses? No, not yet, but they're plentiful. Who knows? Okay, so that's President Angel. He concludes, now this is important, really important. He concludes the letter saying he does not want to understate the challenge facing this committee to preserve what is good in the game of football and to remedy all the incidental evils. And this may not be easy. Okay, now he's given them the task, go to work, men. They go around the table, and as I'm reading this, doing the research, I'm waiting for somebody to say something about what should be preserved because of the good of the game. This isn't even in their heads. It's nowhere to be found. Everything is ugly, mean, and needs to be changed. These are all threats. And Frederick Jackson Turner, whom I remember meeting his work, at least, when I was working on my master's degree in American history, he was really quite a nationally prominent American historian. He is the key guy at Wisconsin. He's the one who gets this whole thing going. And he gets the boys down at, Chicago loses its president. William Rainey Harper, its first president, was a football nut. He loved Stagg. Stagg was one of his religion students when he taught at Yale. They both were at Yale. And when he goes down, when Rockefeller decides to build a wonderful university in Chicago, Harper becomes the president. And he says, we need football. We need sports. I need Stagg. Stagg played baseball at Yale for, I think, 6 years at least. Anyway, so he's got his man, and they win that final game, breaking Michigan's streak, the 2-0 victory in 1905. And a short time after that, he's on his deathbed, and they're bringing him all the play-by-play, everything else. And when that finished, he succumbs and he dies about 2 months following that game. The fellow who was their acting president was the opposite. He hated football. So Chicago and Wisconsin are going to get this thing going. Now, I don't want to read all these because it's in chapter 8, page 132. But if you look at each one of those, here's Henry Pratt Judson, the acting president of Chicago. There's a guy from Illinois, Barton, Moran from Purdue, Iowa Smith, and so on. And every one of them is talking about there's way too much adulation for athletes. They're held up. Okay, they come up with 8 resolutions. Now you won't find any of these that have anything to do with saving what's good about football. None of them. Freshmen will be barred from competition. Oh, yeah, we get a good start as college. All right, we'll buy that. The number of games will be reduced to 5. They're playing about 11 or 12. And only 1 game will be allowed with a conference foe. Thus, there will be no conference champion. There'll be no rankling about or trying to win a conference champion. There can't be one. 3, athletes must be bona fide students in residence for 1 year. No tramp athletes. 4, graduate students will be barred from varsity competition. These guys are too old to it. No, we need to stick with young people playing this game. 5, the admission charge in games must be lowered so all students can be afforded. We're charging $2 a head. Come on, 50 cents. 50 cents. That's it. So we've got to stop this flow of cash that's letting us pay good salaries to coaches and buy equipment and other things. Number 6, varsity. Now, this was the killer. Varsity eligibility will be limited to 3 years. And this should be made retroactively. This means that seniors who'd already played 3 years of varsity football, whether they were captain and All-American or what, and whether they thought they were going to play 4 years when they came here as freshmen, no. They're immediately ineligible. Oh, that went well with Michigan. And 7, training tables and training quarters are to be abolished. When Michigan had its rally following this, and 4,000 seats in the University Hall, every one of them taken ahead of time, a very professionally conducted a meeting of protest. One of the regents said, I don't think anybody outside of Ann Arbor should be allowed to tell us what we can feed an athlete or how much we should charge them for that meal. And number 8, there'll be no coaching except by regular members of the instructional staff. Ooh. And they must be hired by the faculty at a salary and position no more than that paid to any other members of that same faculty rank. Oh. Now, Mr. Yost, with your wonderful stipend for coaching our football team, no. First of all, you ain't going to be here because you are not a full-time faculty member. You are just a galloping coach, a lawyer who's making his living in doing some excavations of minerals. No, you're gone.
Doesn't it seem like that these are almost personal attacks on Yost? I mean, they're directed to diminish him or to rid him. Is that the feeling that you get from these?
And that's exactly the feeling the students had. They did not trust Stagg. First of all, they knew that we had a great rivalry, and Stagg he could beat everybody else, but he could not beat Yost. Yost beat him 4 times in a row, and the one victory he got was the 2-0 upset in the last game of the season. But anyway, Michigan's idea was that a few of the schools were trying to bring Yost down, and at least 4 of them could care less and were quite willing to pile on because they had nothing to gain by seeing football stay. They were not playing well. They were not. It was not lucrative. It was problematic. And if they played Michigan, they get trimmed pretty soundly. And of course, well, there are 4 teams there: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Chicago. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now those 4 teams were serious about football and had 20,000 wonderful crowds, and it financed everything. The income from their key games, because they didn't play big games all the way through, they had a lot of warm-up games, but they'd have about 3 big games, and where they had a large city where they could get some. Minneapolis, they had 20,000 at Northrop Field. In any case, the feeling was that they're taking us down, and then everybody else is piling on. About 3 or 4, they really did not trust Chicago or Wisconsin, either one, but not the students of Wisconsin, the faculty of Wisconsin.
Now, anyway, I have a question, Doctor. Now, I understand the focus of many of these, but why would, especially those other 3 schools that weren't Michigan, that were very competitive and drawing 20-some thousand to games, why would they only want limited to 1 conference game per year and 5 games? Because that would sort of take money away from them in essence, wouldn't it?
I think that this is faculty driven.
Okay.
And what we want to take the cash cow out of the play so that we can get back to intramural football, intramural athletics, a campus that's basically strongly academic and only incidentally interested in sports. And so the faculty are saying, we're the big cheese. We are going to take control. They are not going to ally themselves with football or with any of the sports, quite frankly. And of course, they get themselves in trouble, the faculty do, by not being interested in the students' sports interests at all. Let them grovel. They don't have equipment, so what? They don't have this, so what? Let them baseball in the summer and baseball in the spring. Track and field was minor, but football. This is a guy. And basketball isn't invented until 1890, and they don't really get serious about basketball until the 1920s, really. So football is the guy, and keep those students out of trouble. Let's put some faculty member down there who can butter up to them. He'll like them, and they'll like him, and he'll see that they don't cause any trouble and bring any bad publicity to the university. That's it. Get this nonsense, get this recreational thing out of our eyesight, I guess, out of our vision. Now, it grows because there's some, football just absolutely it's a magnet. It has so much intrigue, and the crowds get there. Well, first at Michigan, they had about 400 or 500. The Yost first year up there, but then it goes nuts. They wind up playing to crowds of between 15 and 20,000. So, faculty total insensitivity to student interest beyond academics, and allowing it to get way out of proportion, then coming up with it's like swatting flies with a sledgehammer. They're annoyed by it, and they're going to crush it, which is the worst thing they could have done. But anyway, and so Michigan's campus is handling it very diplomatically. They have a meeting in University Hall where they've had wonderful pep rallies prior to big games. Students love it. They sing the songs. They sing the songs of the other team. When you talk about camaraderie, I think the last time you and I spoke, I talked about Vanderbilt coming up to play Michigan, and their coach has a illness in the family and can't come accompany the team. The students meet the team at the train station in Ann Arbor, welcome them. They come to the pep rally, 4,000 students there. When the Vanderbilt team comes in, they're playing Dixie, the Michigan band is. I mean, these guys are absolutely swept off their feet, and they need somebody to help them until their coach was able to get to Ann Arbor. Yost takes them through workouts. I mean, you talk about goodwill. It was there, and he set the pace of that. And Michigan students set the pace of that. And Yost could hold them in the palm of his hand. He could say, whoever wins, we will do it respectfully, and we will respect each other, and it will be good for the game. Wonderful relationships with other schools. Michigan having in those kind of rallies. Now we have a rally, 4,000 students in that University Hall, and they're acting sensibly and in direct opposition to what those 8 resolutions are asking them to do. They're saying this can't be, just can't be. It's not fair. They reject. Well, first of all, they send back these objections. One, you cannot tell us to fire Yost. He has 4 years more going on a legitimate contract. You can't tell athletes who come in to your programs, your academic programs, as freshmen, you can't tell them as seniors, I'm sorry, but we've changed that now, so you can't graduate as you thought you could when you read the requirements in your freshman year. We've changed those retroactively. You can't do that. So in any case, they're trying to be sensible, and they send them back. The Albert Pattengill goes back, and he tries to voice the opinions that the campus is given, they all fall on deaf ears. No, they're not going to change anything. No. So he comes back, and now we got the major diplomat, James B. Angel, the president. You got Albert Pattengill. Pattengill is back for 1 week and dies, heart attack. So there goes one diplomat who could have, although he was completely in sympathy with the views of the president, he could have aided in the discussion, but he was gone. I get nobody who wanted, well, the faculty want Michigan to adhere to the conference resolutions, all 8 of them, since they didn't get a 2/3 vote, okay? And the students are saying, this is our baby, not yours, faculty. We are going to do something about this, and we know that we want to leave the Big Ten. Now, we know that the way to do that, the steps are, the board in control of athletics must say, we recommend we withdraw from the Big Ten. That recommendation goes to the faculty council. So the university faculty will have the final say about that resolution, the proposal. The students know how this works. And you just don't, throughout Michigan's history, you just don't tell the students where they ought to go. No, they are far more mature than that. They think for themselves because you taught them to think. And they're, by golly, they decide they will go directly to the Board of Trustees, the Board of Regents. They get a petition. It is alleged to have had between 2,000 and 3,000 signatures. And they got about 4,000 in school. So this is a substantial resolution affirming that the university should leave the Big Ten because we are being trounced by people who just don't like us, and they don't like the fact that we are very successful and they're not. So the Board of Trustees think that it's a student game. It's not a faculty game. We're with the students. Michigan should withdraw. So they say to them, now it's the faculty members on the board in control of athletics who are most solidly in favor of going along with these 8 resolutions. And the trustees and the regents say, let's get that resolution to withdraw going. And they balk. Now, see, these guys are not puppets either. So they're thinking for themselves. They know what the faculty whom they represent feel. So they're going to balk. It's not going to go to the academic committee. So the trustees, the regents in the university say, that board has not been properly constituted. And they then change the faculty members and get 4 people who can better represent their point of view. Now that's still, we're seeing, let's see, this is 19, in January 1906 is when all hell breaks loose and the eight resolutions come out. This is almost a year later. There's been a lot of stalling going on, hoping that some way, somehow, Michigan will relent. And on the other side, Michigan is hoping some way, somehow, sense will return to the minds of the people who are doing this, and we'll have some reasonable resolutions here that'll actually improve the game and save what's good about football. The stalling continues even after the Board of Trustees and Board of Regents has restructured the committee, the Board and Control of Athletics Committee. We get to 1908, and finally the jig is up, the patience has run out, and Michigan has delivered an ultimatum. You're either in or you're out. You buy all that we've done or not. And Michigan, by a 5-3 vote, says we're out. So that was the end result of the fabulous committee that sat down to think about how to save what's good about football and how to take out the violence.
That's extremely difficult to even think about that in our modern era, to think of Michigan not being in the Big Ten, withdrawing from the Big Ten. So, but it's some big circumstances that caused them to that. And I fully understand why they would do so. That's the power of the students was heard. That's for sure.
And, I've stumbled upon, really quite by accident, a remarkable letter written by Ralph Egler, who was a chair of the law department at the University of Michigan, a extremely talented man. And he was the guy, and this was the letter that broke the ice. Michigan gets back in 2017. So gone for 9 years, and never going to come back because there's the arteries are continuing to harden. No one is relenting, and no one. There's just something about being on top that garners pride and envy. And if they envy you and your success, if you aren't extremely humble, they never want to see your side of the story. And so Michigan basically had a tough time. They had to go east. They had to find, of course, Yost had come from that side, that part of the country anyway, with his West Virginia roots. He wasn't that far from the University of Pennsylvania and some of the eastern schools, Cornell. So in any case, they had to go and find, and they a number of other things changed. So that we see in terms of my story about Yost, we see how he handles adversity. They took him when he was at his peak, and he thought he was going to come back to a continuously great winning tradition, and they took everything away. And Michigan's out of the conference, and now we got to travel a long way. And of course, it really hurts the minor sports because the baseball teams they don't have a budget that lets them do the kind of traveling that if they can't play Big Ten schools. Anyway, well, have we worn this topic out?
No, it's intriguing. It's really interesting, and it's just such an important period in football. And just thinking about what Yost going into that 1906 season, he really had to change his philosophy and his strategies of playing the game because the rules had changed drastically. I believe he had that famous tackle back play that his teams were very successful on. Now they changed the rule. I believe the tackles, if they're not going forward at the snap, they have to go at least retreat 5 yards before they go another direction or something like that, I believe. And so that took a big part of his game out, right?
Now, let me help you with that one, because that's not really what was happening. Yost did not have that kind of play. He always was up with the rules, but University of Pennsylvania had a wonderful tackle back play, and they would start him in motion. They start him on the line of scrimmage, then in motion into the backfield, and boom, 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 off they go. And it was people could not stop that play. It was a heck of a play. They changed the rules. They're trying to eliminate mass blocking and high injury situations. And as you mentioned a minute ago, sometimes teams would pick on the star and wear him out. And that was a strong strategy of the Penn team and their success. They would find the guy who they had to absolutely eliminate from the game, and they would take turns on him until they finally was able to really injure him and get him out of the game. And again, they learned that from their opponents. So it wasn't that they were the only one who had that strategy. But now Yost has to play in the East, and he has to play Penn now because he's lost Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago. And so he's at Penn, and they are running that play just as they've always run it so successfully. And Yost says to the official, they can't do that. Here's what that player has to be moved forward if he's on the line of scrimmage. He cannot move back into the backfield. And the official says, you're right. So he calls the Penn coach. He says, this is a story. You got to, the Penn says, no, it isn't. We're going to run the play the way we've always run it. See, he was not up on the rule, or apparently maybe he didn't even want to be up on the rule. And then the Penn guys say, take your team and go home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a thing I liked about Yost. He was never going to do anything that would bring dishonor to the game. So he said, you're wrong, but we'll play because you insist upon it. And they did. And Michigan did lose that game, but I think in the long haul, it was better for the game rather than to have everybody hating everybody else, leaving in disgust. We came out to play the game, we don't even get to play it. No, he was very big about it. Anyway.
Well, I found it pretty interesting. I believe you referred just like a day or two later after that game was over that Walter Camp, the founder of many of these rules on the committee and many of the ways that football became football, American football, he commented that said, Yost had the right interpretation of that rule and that the officials letting that happen were incorrect. So I gave him some great credibility there for what he has said.
Yeah. But that's
very interesting.
Michigan's, so the title of my chapter 8 there was All Hell Breaks Loose. And it really did. But I love the dynamics of how the universities, the people, the students especially, but all the alumni who were in support of it, the regents, I love the way they handled it. They tried very much to make it work. And but the hard line of the faculty members throughout the Big Ten ruled the day.
Well, Dr. Behee, that is incredibly interesting. Again, before we let you go, why don't you tell us once again where people can get a copy of your book, which is the titled Coach Yost, Michigan's Tradition Maker.
Yeah. And let me get, do I have it here in front of me? I have been reading from it. Yes, I just happen to have a handsome copy of it right there. And, my son is a remarkable guy in terms of creativity and genius and photography and all. And these are the exact Michigan colors. Now, I know a lot of your folks are not Michigan fans, but they're football fans. But anyway, it's really nicely done. And instead of putting the photos all in one place, my son said, let them tell the story, put them throughout the story where they have the most dynamics. And if you see the picture of the Northrop Field in 1903 and 20,000 people in there, every light pole on the outside of the stadium there are 6 or 7 people up on that light pole, every high perch, football mania. And this guy was one of the big triggering elements in that. Behee.com.
Okay.
Behee.com. And that gets you the step-by-step how to get it. And basically, the MDN in Ann Arbor has always been a big supplier of Michigan paraphernalia and books. They have it. They'll mail it out to you. Nicola's is a nice bookstore in the mall, the western part of Ann Arbor, and they have it. They'll get it to you, and you can also get it online.
Now, folks, don't get the impression this is just a total Michigan book, because this is basically early football history through the lens of the campus of Michigan, through much of it. But it goes to Dr. Behee goes through the campuses of the other schools, the Stanfords and Kansases and Nebraskas and the others that Coach Yost was involved with. And it's just a fascinating book. It tells a lot about early football. I learned a lot from it, and I thought I knew a lot about early football, but this enhanced my knowledge. And I appreciate you sharing your story in your book, Doctor, and I appreciate your time sharing with us today, once again, on this very interesting person in football history, Fielding H. Yost. So, Doctor, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff, for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
It was just another ordinary day in the offices of the Pittsburgh Guardian newspaper circa 1924. But for Marla Delft, assistant editor, everything was about to change. For she was about to discover the awesome attractiveness of Row 1 brand retro sports paraphernalia items thanks to Orville Mulligan, sports writer.
And there it is.
Wow, Orville, that's really the bee's knees.
Isn't it just? A poster-sized replica of the actual 1909 World Series program cover.
I can see that. But where did you get it? And where'd you get it framed?
I ordered it from the Row 1 website, where over 6,000 items of sports memorabilia from the 1880s to the 1990s are available for reproduction, in multiple sizes and in several different materials, with over a dozen styles of frame to choose from for prints like this.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Delft would love to put up more of these in the office. But I'm equally as sure they're beyond this newspaper's budget.
Not at all, my dear Marla. See for yourself. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/row1.
sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. Oh my, these are good prices. Oh, and look at this stuff. Oklahoma-Nebraska football, college basketball art, Michael Jordan items.
And so it
retro
was that
sports
Marla Delft
advertisement
discovered the
placards.
splendiferous magic of Row 1 sports memorabilia, arts, and prints. You can too by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. That's ROW1 today for access to the full Row 1 catalog of gallery prints and gifts like t-shirts, long-sleeve shirts, telephone cases, coffee mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Act today for 15% discount off all prints with coupon code SHN15 and 20% off all other items with coupon code SHN20 at checkout. And keep your dial locked to the Sports History Network for the exciting chronicles of the 1920 sports world in Orville Mulligan, sports writer. Coming soon.